In this video, I'm going to help you prepare for the coming Xyz event in Master Duel. If it is something you enjoy, be sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Only like 20% of viewers right now subscribe. Come on, just subscribe. I'll wait for you. Go ahead. Thanks, let's get into the video. Now, one little warning I want to give you, and this is very important, so don't make this mistake. Do not craft stuff just yet. Do not build decks just yet. It is entirely possible that there will be new kinds of regulations and bans and limits and restrictions for this event in particular. And so if you now watch this list of really strong decks or potentially good decks for this format and you go, oh, I want to build that. Craft. And then they go, I'm gonna ban this and this and this. And now you wasted all of your crafting materials and gems for a deck that you can't even play. That is a huge mistake. I will be going over really good decks that might be solid in the Xyz event. And so now you can already prepare a little. You know, get to know some of the combos, get to know some of the card choices, get to know some of your options. But if you start crafting now and it ends up, you know, getting hit in some way or they limit something here and there, you don't want to be caught with your pants down. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, the Xyz event, which is coming in a few days, is basically gonna be an event where you can only use Xyz monsters in your extra deck. And then you will get a bunch of rewards for playing in the event. The event will last a week, and it's basically the first major content update Master Duel is getting. So because we know it's an Xyz event and you can't use other extra deck monsters, we can at least start preparing by knowing what the stronger Xyz decks are. So I'm going to go over some of them and then also some honorable mentions. Now, I'm not saying that I'm listing every single good Xyz deck out there. So if you now go, oh, you forgot this one. Yeah, it's very possible. I'm just gonna list a few, and if you have more options, awesome, list them in the comments down below and we can all learn from each other. Now, after this, I will also make a video going over some of the strongest Xyz monsters you might want to prepare for. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe. So without further ado, let's get into the decks. Now, deck number one is a controversial one, and that is Eldritch. Now, I know Eldritch is not really an Xyz deck, and I think it's very possible that Eldritch will actually get hit by Konami in this particular event and basically all the extra deck events. Eldritch doesn't need their extra deck. Eldritch is tier 1 or tier 1.5, whatever you want to call it, even without ever reaching into their extra. So if they allow Eldritch unharmed into the event, it's entirely possible that it is best deck by a landslide and other people don't even get to play. So if they don't hit Eldritch, this is probably a very safe pick. It's probably going to be very strong, and it's also very budget friendly. I do, however, think that they will be hitting it because otherwise, you know, it'll just be the best deck in Xyz and it'll be the best deck in Synchro and it'll be the best deck everywhere. Now, in Xyz, it is actually even stronger because the primary thing it usually makes if it reaches for the extra deck is Gustav, the big boy cannon. It also makes Constellar Pleiades sometimes. It might make the even bigger cannon, the Super Dreadnought, whatever the hell. And then of course it could also make Zeus. But overall, this deck is like extra. I don't need an extra. So if it's not hit, Eldritch is definitely a deck to watch out for. Next we have Zodiac. Zodiac is incredibly strong. It is entirely reliant on Xyzing. It is basically Xyz the deck, and so this list could never be a thing without having Zodiac on there. This was also, I think some would argue, a tier 0 format at some point. Was it 2017? When was it? I don't know. I don't keep track of time. Was it 2017? I didn't actually play when it was all the rage. But even now, it's still really solid with Tri-Brigade. Now, of course, once we have the Xyz event, it'll just be pure Zodiac because Tri-Brigade is basically a Link archetype. But pure, when everyone else can't use their extra anyway beyond Xyz's, Zodiac is probably gonna be a top contender. Another really strong deck is Burning Abyss in Xyz format. They can basically link off into Dante and then get a billion advantage. And these days, it's still playable even in the link format. It's not super top tier anymore, but definitely still decent, you know, solid enough to hit plat with. So once you take all of that out and they are back into their Xyz prime, this is definitely a deck to watch out for. Next, and again, this is in no particular order, I think Virtual World deserves a little credit here. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be anywhere near full power, obviously. Virtual World, at its core, wants to make a billion synchro monsters. However, it can still special its level 3s and level 6s very, very easily. And so it is possible that it'll still be solid in this format, considering everything else is powered down as well. With that being said, I do think this will be much lower on the list, you know, if you were to make a tier list of Xyz decks, than some of the other ones on this list, like a Zodiac, for example. Next, in the same vein of, you know, it's kinda okay, but it's probably not gonna be insane, we have Phantom Knights. Now, Phantom Knights are able to special level 3s really easily, and after that, if you detach for some effect, they go to the graveyard, meaning now you get to use their graveyard effects as well. So for that reason, I do think Phantom Knights is pretty solid. Beyond that, they can make Breaksword. Breaksword murders itself. It gives you back your level 4s, and now you can do level 4 link plays, like with Arc Rebellion, Dark Requiem, and so forth. So they do have some plays, but I don't think they're quite at the same power level as the Zodiac or the Eldritch, if that could potentially be in this format. I, however, do really like Phantom Knights, so, you know, I'm a bit biased there. However, getting back to a real powerhouse, we have Numeron. I don't know if this will actually be legal in this format, because Numeron, the OTK, is really, really solid, and when everything else is being powered down, Numeron is going to be quite a deck. It's essentially a modern day deck, you know, in terms of power level, at least when it gets to OTK, but when people aren't able to link climb, the negate boards aren't going to be as crazy, and so yeah, Numeron might be a really strong contender. Now, another OTK deck, or well, it doesn't need to OTK, it has plays, but now it has a solid OTK. We have Utopia, and then of course also the double or nothing plays. So you can basically attack with a 10,000 attack monster, and then obviously, you know, your opponent just freaking dies. So it's very possible that we see some form of Utopia. It doesn't necessarily need to do the OTK, it has other strong plays as well, but it does have access to that right now. Next, we have another pretty cool deck. I'm actually a big fan of this one, and that is Frogs. Now, Frog with Paleozoic and so forth is essentially a trap deck, back row heavy, but because of the frog element, you can also make it totally awesome, which also gets you a negate, and it's an Xyz. Now, the final deck on this list actually isn't the deck yet. However, I do think there's value here, and that is anything that makes Rongo. Now, I don't know if this will be legal, again, kind of like the Eldritch thing we were talking about. If there's a deck that can make a Rongo with Gossip Shadow that just locks your opponent out of playing the game, that might be viable. Now again, I don't know which one it could be. You know, we have Phantom Knights doing that play right now on ladder, but they're usually making links before they get to that whole thing. Normally they make their Cherubini first and their Rusty Bardiche, and maybe then they might go into the Rongo stuff and so forth. Without any of their more modern cards, I don't know how well they'll be able to make Rongo, and again, I don't know if Rongo will even be legal on this list. I will keep you updated, of course, on this channel as we get more information, but if it's legal, it's very possible someone figures out a cool deck where they make Rongo and then you just don't get to play the game. Now, there are two cards I want to give a honorable mention here, and then after that some more decks I want to give honorable mentions, because obviously this list was short and there's a lot of good Xyz decks out there, and there's a bunch I probably won't even mention, so again, be sure to put them in the comments down below. The first card that absolutely needs to be mentioned is Zeus. Zeus is a Xyz that was released pretty recently, and so it has modern day power levels in basically a old day-ish format. Zeus is an Xyz that any deck that can make an Xyz can make, and so it's very possible that this entire format will come down to Zeusing each other and playing around each other's Zeuses. Unless, of course, there's some crazy unfair thing that we haven't figured out yet, or maybe some people are making Rongo and crazy things like that. But if it doesn't devolve into a shitfest like that, it is very possible that Zeus will be in every single extra. It is just that powerful of a card. Now again, don't go crafting it just yet. It's very possible that they go, actually, Zeus, you know what, we're not gonna play with Zeus. We don't know about that yet, but it's a very powerful card. Now, another card I want to give a mention to is not even an Xyz card, and it is Dimensional Barrier. Because Dimensional Barrier basically says you flip it and then you choose some type of archetype like Xyz or Synchro or Fusion or whatever, and then your opponent doesn't get to use them. In the current format on just ranked, you don't necessarily know what your opponent is playing. It's best of one, and so the card isn't quite as impactful. It's also possible your opponent doesn't even reach into their extra deck. However, in a format where you already know your opponent is going to be Xyz summoning, it might actually be really powerful to just always play 3-dimensional barrier and just flip it and always call Xyz. Even if you don't know what your opponent is gonna do. Even if you don't know anything. You just floodgated them out of the game, knowing that you used your place, you Xyz'd and whatever, and your opponent will just not get to. If they don't hit this in some way, and I'm sure there's other cards that do similar things, but if they don't stop that from happening, it's very possible that we A, see every deck run this, or B, see a deck that specifically just thinks, I'm not gonna use my Xyz's, I don't care, I'm a trap deck, but I also have Dimensional Barrier, and so you don't get to use your Xyz's, and that's gonna be an even bigger deal if you are a pure Xyz deck. I don't know how that will play out, but again, keep in mind that this strat might be popping up everywhere. Now, in terms of other decks that can do cool Xyz stuff, first of all, we have Time Thieves. My experience with Time Thieves is just making Redoer in PK, so I'm sure there's much smarter Time Thief players out there, but this is a solid Xyz archetype. Next, we have Constellar. This is also an Xyz archetype. They can make Ptolemy M7 and they can also make Constellar Pleiades, which is a very solid spin card. Again, like I mentioned, Constellar Pleiades is also something Eldritch can make, so watch out for that card. Now, another one I really like is Cyber Dragons, but the big problem is that Cyber Dragons doesn't have access to its fusions, nor Predaplant Verde Anaconda, nor Seeger. I don't know if Cyber Dragons is good enough to compete in this Xyz meta with just the Nova and Infinity. It is possible, you know, maybe someone does some crazy stuff with Galaxy Soldier and Naxter to very consistently make Nova, Infinity, and all of that good stuff, maybe even doing some OTKs. I don't know. I'm not so sure of that, but again, I'm a Cyber fanboy, so it'd be really cool to see. Infinity is a powerhouse of a card for sure. Another fun one might be Blue Eyes. Now, again, I'm not saying Blue Eyes is phenomenal or anything like that, but in a world where people don't have access to links and synchros, Blue Eyes being able to make rank 8s pretty easily, and thus having access to some of those very strong rank 8s might be better than it is in the current format. Now, again, it will probably not be best deck or anywhere near it. Let's say Blue Eyes' power level is here, and all the modern stuff power level is here. If everyone is forced down here, you know, Blue Eyes technically got better, relatively. It'd be interesting to see, but again, I'm not saying it'll be like top of the meta or anything like that. Noble Knights is also a fan favorite that can make a bunch of Xyz's. And then finally, I know I have to mention this one or people will lose their mind. Yes, there's Trains. Trains make Xyz's. The deck exists. It might be good. Or it might not be, I don't know. But if I don't mention it, I know people will riot. With that being said, I hope you found this interesting. Again, I'm sure there's other powerful Xyz decks. Be sure to mention them in the comments down below. We can all learn from each other. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Crucial. And I will see you soon. Ciao.